Hello everyone, this is International Master Robert Jamieson from Kids Unlimited in Melbourne, Australia. And I was thinking the other day, if I could give my students one piece of advice to help them become a better player, what would it be? I've decided what I think is the most suitable advice I can give, but let me start off with a bit of an introduction. Let's talk about boxing. Now, I know nothing much about boxing. It's not my field of expertise. But let's suppose you were about to have you're a boxer and you're about to be in an important boxing match and you want to win. What would your strategy be? So me just thinking about it, I think, I'd go out there and I'd try to hit him as hard as I could and as often as I could, and hopefully avoid him hitting me too much and hope I can knock him out and win. Sounds like a great plan. But then I remembered back many years ago, probably the greatest of all time boxer, Muhammad Ali, had a fight. I think it might have been against George Foreman. So this was towards the end of Ali's career, and his opponent was bigger than Ali. He was taller. He was younger, he was stronger, he had a bigger reach. So how was Muhammad Ali going to possibly beat this younger, stronger guy? And the fight was really strange. It started off and Ali basically put his hands up, covering his face, and let George Foreman punch him. So George Foreman's going punch, 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 punch. And for rounds and rounds, it goes on like this. Every now and then, Ali tries to throw a punch. But after a number of rounds, George Foreman's arms got really, really tired and he could barely lift them. And then Ali took his arms down, counterattacked, and won. So his strategy was a far from obvious thing to play defensively and to wear out his opponent. Okay, so I think the same thing basically applies in chess. I find that most players, their understanding of how they win in chess is, the aim is to checkmate the opponent's king. So what are we going to do? We're going to go out there. We are going to threaten stuff. We are going to take his pieces. We're going to try and checkmate him as quickly as we can. And that's our plan. A bit like my plan in the boxing match. But the secret I can tell you now is that that's not a very good plan, even though most players think that's the way to go. So if you want to have a good chance of beating players, say, under 2000 rating who don't understand this, then what you do is very simple. What you have to understand is that chess is about building up a strong position, not about attacking, building up a strong position. And I find that more often than not, before I can even think about attacking or doing anything aggressive, my opponent has lashed out and tried to attack me or played some faulty combination or something, and I just win without trying. So to illustrate this, I've got one of my online games I played the other day. It was just a 10-minute and 3-second game. And at the end of the game, I checked my stats and it said I made no inaccuracies, no mistakes, no blunders, and my centi pawn loss was 9. It's a very short game, but pretty good stats. So let's see how this is possible. So we'll start off, we're white, play e4, because I play e4 most of the time. Now he plays the Caro-Kann. All right, so I have got all my openings down pat. So if someone plays a Caro-Kann, I know what line I'm going to play. So I seize the center, he plays d5, and I play the exchange line. This is my pet line. All right. Now, for those of you with an understanding of the Caro-Kann, the idea is to get your bishop outside your pawn chain before you play e6. So you don't end up with a French defense type bishop tucked in inside your pawn chain. All right. With that in mind, my next move is not knight c3 or knight f3. Like if I play knight f3, he's going to pin it. Play e6, he's got his bishop outside the pawn chain. All right, so I play bishop d3. So that stopped him from playing bishop f5, and he can't play bishop g4. All right, let's see what he does. Knight c6, taking my d pawn. So I just defend it. And now, if he was a grandmaster, he would probably play queen c7. The idea being to take away the good diagonal for my black square bishop. So I have to say, where am I going to put my bad bishop? Or he could play knight f6, the idea being to support bishop g4, get the bishop outside the pawn chain after all. But my opponent played e6. So I thought, okay, you beauty, this guy is probably not too hot. He's voluntarily locked his bishop in. What do I do? Well, I want to get my bad bishop outside or swapped off. So I play bishop f4. Right, he challenges me. Now I'm happy to trade. Unfortunately, he recaptures with developing move, but still, I'm trading my bad bishop for his good bishop. If you don't know what a good and bad bishop are, the good bishop is the one that's the opposite color to your pawn chain. So like if we take the dark squared bishops away, black is weak on the dark squares because he has no bishop controlling it, and his center pawns aren't controlling the dark squares, whereas my pawns are controlling dark squares, and my bishop, my good bishop, is controlling the white squares. All right, my next move is pretty easy. Knight f3, getting ready to castle. And the important thing about this position is white's trying to control and dominate the e5 square. If I'm controlling that square, that will give me more space on the king side and perhaps attacking chances on the king side later. All right, now he plays knight out. That's all right. I castle. He castles. Knight d2. So I can play all these moves in a second because this is the standard position I'm going for. Don't have to think. Right, now he has to decide what he's going to do. So he could think, well, this bishop's inside the pawn chain. I'm not happy with that. I want to get it out. So I'm going to play e5, which sure enough would release the bishop. But the trouble is that has given him a weak, isolated pawn. And more importantly, the square in front of the isolated pawn is a lovely outpost. I'll probably put my knight there, I would think, and try and swap off into an endgame and see if I can win that weak pawn. But he didn't do that. He just parked his bishop there. All right, what to do, what to do? My next move again is obvious. So we're thinking about dominating e5, and I want to stop him playing it, so if I can. So rook e1. All right, now he plays a5. Right. Well, clearly black should be playing on the queen side. If you don't know where you should be playing, have a look where your pawn chain is pointing. So black's pawn chain is pointing towards the queen side, so he should attack queen side. White's pawn chain is pointing towards the king side, so he should attack king side. So black could consider something like rook here and then knight here and here, or knight here and get the pawns going. Something like that would be a normal looking plan, but he played a5. All right, so now I'm sort of on my own for the first time. What do I do? All right, well, my brain automatically tries to stop my opponent doing what they want to do. So for this build up your position strategy, your aim is to leave your opponent with a position where he does not know what to do. And, or alternatively, perhaps where he has too many choices and he might make a bad one. So when he doesn't know what to do, that chances are he's going to come up with a bad idea. So my move here, I thought, okay, this is pretty good. I've stopped his pawn play. So I'm controlling the b5 square for the moment. So I've stopped his queenside play. All right, what does he do now? Rook there. All right. So why did he go there? Well, clearly he wants to still get this pawn play in, so he's probably thinking knight here and pawn here and try and do something on the queen side. That's good. That for me has moved a piece away from the king side. So my next move Moving forwards, knight e5. Now, the good part about this is, of course, he cannot take me because my pawn would then be skewering the queen and the knight. So I've got my knight on a good spot. And my follow-up moves are probably going to be queen e2. And then I decide what I'm doing on the king side, how I'm going to get an attack going. Am I moving my knight in, or am I moving a pawn up or something? But he now collapses. He should probably have played bishop there to protect this pawn here and get his bishop out of the way. Then, as I said, maybe I'm doing queen e2, maybe I'm doing h4. But I think my attack's going to be a little bit faster than his. But he didn't do that. He decided he was worried about this knight. Maybe he wants to swap it off. And he can't because of the skewer. So he moved his knight back, either so that he could take, or he might want to push me away like this, perhaps. But, of course, this is a terrible move. And in 1 second flat, my pattern recognition kicked in. I hope yours did too, because white now has a simple winning move. If you haven't worked it out yet, just have a quick look. And look how lonely black's king is. Most of his pieces are on the queen side. The poor king is there with his 3 pawns, looking pretty lonely. So let's finish him off. Bishop takes pawn check, very common sacrifice. Right, what would you play if you were black? You have 3 legal moves. What would you play? It's a strange thing about human psychology that for some reason, if I take you, just about everyone thinks you have to take me back. Now, if you look at it, taking me back is a disaster. You're going to be checkmated, and my moves are all pretty obvious. If you thought about it, and if you're a stronger player, you'd just put your king here. Now, you've lost a pawn, fine, and white still has a really strong attack. You'd probably go queen here, I would imagine. But it's not totally clear how white's to proceed, and black is not dead. But people like taking. All right, now let's finish him off. Queen check, king back. Another pawn with check, so we've got 2 pawns, an open king. All right, what would you play here if you were white? What do you think? Have a quick look. Some of you, I think, would be very tempted to play knight takes bishop, which is a good move. It might be threatening knight here check, and knight takes rook as well. That's a good move. But of course, when you see a good move, you should stop and look in case there's a better move. And the better move relates to black's king. So what are you trying to do? You're trying to checkmate the king. He's there on the side of the board looking very lonely. Can we put him out of his misery? Of course we can. Rook e3. Now he has no defense. He plays knight takes knight, and thank you for the game. Rook h3 mate. All right, so basically I didn't have to spend any time thinking. I played my opening. He made a blunder. I played bishop takes pawn check. I won. No inaccuracies, no blunders, no mistakes, CPL of 9. How easy was that? And all I did was build up a nice position and waited for my opponent to self-destruct. I think that will probably work for you as well. So feel free to give it a try. Let me know how you go. I'll see you in the next video.